All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Bo Mandarin. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's live Q&A session with myself and my business partner, Chris Goff. Now, for those of you joining for the first time, first, let me just say welcome, and we're glad you're here. We spend the first part of the session answering all the questions that our users have sent in, and then time permitting, we're going to take some live questions. So if you have any questions now or anything comes up during tonight that you want to get clarified or ask, go ahead and open up that Q&A panel and just start typing your questions in there so that they'll already be queued up and ready to go at the end. Now, just a couple of announcements before we get started. Our team here is always working diligently, but we've put together with your help what we'd like to call our top 10 list. And these are the things that you guys would like to see added or changed in the system, and we're working really hard to bring those changes and those features to you guys. For example, we have numerous suggestions on how to import properties into the campaign section and how to improve that and make it easier, faster, and better. So that's going to be coming out here real soon, so look for the announcement. But again, thank you guys for sending in all of those suggestions, because it's really you guys that are really helping make this system the best there is. So let's go ahead and see if we can bring on Chris Goff with us here.
You see me?
Oh, there you go. I see you.
Perfect. Kind of cut off. I need to shrink a little bit, but hope everyone's doing awesome. And just to kind of add to what Bo just said, keep in mind, we do have the 50% off all printing cost going on right now. It's going to go through till next Monday, so the holiday. Then the second thing is episode number 2 for wholesaling is coming out tomorrow. And so I'm just putting some final touches on it. And we'll get that released out to you tomorrow. We'll be putting it only in the REI Pro Education Center. So you'll be able to, you'll have to log in to see that particular training. It will not be public on YouTube. So we will also have this recording tonight released in REI Pro as well. So you got a lot of great education, especially for those that couldn't make it tonight. You got a long, hopefully, holiday weekend. You can get educated. And just to further what Bo said is, thank you guys so much for sending in everything, all your suggestions. We're making this best for you to help you out in your career, understanding this, kind of the roadblocks in real estate, and definitely hope that these live Q&As are helping as well. So I am ready to go. I know Bo is not feeling all that great tonight, so we're gonna keep it easy on him, but
oh, you're so kind.
I try to be, sometimes. So other than that, I think we are ready to go.
All right, so we'll just dive right in here. Let me get the screen going. All right, so the first question coming from Dale. When do lease options and seller finances, when are the real estate brokers involved?
Yeah, so let's separate the two strategies. From a lease option point of view, I like to have my tenant buyers work with the mortgage broker right from day one. And I want to understand where their credit is. I want my broker to build a roadmap for my buyer. Or seller financing, generally, we're going to go much longer term. That one's more of, and they're going to refinance it in a seller finance. So that's probably going to happen further down the road. And again, depending on the term that you have, if you have a short seller finance term, you'd want them to work with your broker much sooner. But in a lease option, I really like to have them, from day one, if possible, because you don't want to wait till the end of the lease option, 12 months to figure out, oh my gosh, they can't qualify, or they haven't been working on the things that they should have worked on to get qualified. So with lease options, definitely from the beginning. And then seller financing, I would say anywhere from, 30 to 90 days out from when they need to refinance it. So I think that's pretty simple.
All right. Next question's coming in from Cheryl. Hello, guys. This is my second time around. I just received my real estate license in Maryland, D.C. I returned because young investors like myself need this information to get started. My question is this. I am interested in a property that has a tax sale status. I'm having a problem finding out this information.
Yeah, so tax sales are a little bit different. My recommendation is to definitely get with the county. Every county has different rules on, especially with bidding rules. And in like a Maryland, because I kind of grew up in the DC area, but in Virginia, but you know, when you're working with the tax sale, it's not like, hey, I'm going to take a realtor with me. I'm going to go look through the property and do all these things that we would normally do. Um, you're really just buying the debt. And then there's going to be that length of time. And I think in Maryland, I think it's like 6 months or something that the owner can come back, the redemption period on that particular. So to find out the information from a bidding point of view, you really need to get with the county. Each county is going to do it a little bit different, and you can Google this, and they're going to have per state some of the rules, how they do tax sales, and so on. From the property point of view, obviously driving by the property, trying to take pictures, you probably won't be allowed on the property, but and then getting an REI Pro and just looking at the basic information. It's also good to know any previous loan information. So if there was a loan on the property, so it could be going through a tax sale and then foreclosure could be following up after that, or it may not even be going through foreclosure, but going through the tax sale. So you want to try to get as much information from REI Pro as well. But at the end of the day, these are a little bit more difficult to get information. And when we say information, what are we talking about? The property? Are we talking about the actual sale, the process? I hope I answered all three of those. If so, that was it for Cheryl.
All right, next one from Bobby. Banks put locks on vacant homes to protect their interests. What's the best method to navigate the locked home situation when a homeowner wishes to sell, but the bank is controlling the access?
So generally, number one, these homes have to be vacant for the bank to even put the lock on there. What they're calling deemed vacant. It's actually in a lot of these mortgages and stuff that, if you leave the house or abandon the house, they could actually lock it up because they want to protect their investment. And I think the big question here is this whole foreclosure, because the bank technically can't take the house until it is foreclosed. So there's this gap, there's this moment of time where if the bank's got a lock on the property because it's been abandoned, they really can't take possession of it. And that's where the owner could actually step forward. The very first thing I would do is to actually have the owner call the bank and find out literally the status of this. And just the owner just needs to be upfront and just say, hey, what's the status of my house? There's a lock on it. And find out more information, because a lot of these are going to probably be foreclosure situations. It's usually why someone just abandons the house, and then the banks, been waiting to go through this foreclosure process. So meanwhile, they're just putting locks on these properties. If you could get the owner to call the bank and get as much information as possible, I mean, that could be like a little niche, and I'm not saying every house on the street is going through this, but it's kind of a little niche if you think about it. And today it's happening. I would say it's more common today than probably in the last 20 years I've been in the business. So have the owner contact the bank. So we got to get a hold of the owner first, Bobby, and find out if they can even sell the property, what the situation, if they're going through the foreclosure proceedings. You might want to then steer into the seller financing, find out the loan balance, and go through that whole process from the pre-foreclosure side of things. So
awesome. Okay, next question coming from Melody. Can we get in trouble for cold calling leads, like legally? What about the do not call list or unsolicited emails, text? I don't want to get sued. Well, Melody, thanks for the question. First, let me just say that I am not an attorney. I would always advise you to go do your own homework on that part, but I can say that personally, myself, or really anybody I've ever known, has gotten in trouble for calling a homeowner and really asking, hey, look, I'm here to buy your house. I think for me, I had a situation one time where I did call a homeowner and they were like, "Hey, how did you get my number?" And I just simply was like, "Well, I just, drive down the street. I noticed you had a house for sale and I'm looking to buy. Want to know if your house is still available." And of course it was, and he could care less about how I got his phone number. So I know that the national do not call list, I know that's put in place really to stop telemarketers and those annoying phone calls we get at the dinner table, and they're trying to sell you a product or service. But in this case, we're not really trying to sell them anything. We're trying to actually buy something from them, So again, I'm not an attorney. Do your due diligence on that. But I can say, as far as the rules around unsolicited, say, emails, text messages, robocalling, things of that nature, there are some laws around that, and some of them are getting even more tight today. So you need to understand, what the rules are when it comes to auto texting and things of that nature before adding that to part of your marketing techniques, though. All right, Peyton. Hi, guys. By being an REI Pro members, do we have access to the wholesaling real estate blueprint course? And is that course updated with the new wholesaling training series? Thanks, guys.
Only if you buy it. So it actually, wholesaling, the information in itself that's going to duplicate, but we go through a little bit more as far as like, how do you set up your business, your power team members, things of that nature, which is going to be more in the home study course than the series in itself. I would go through the series first as we're releasing it. If you feel like you need more information, then you can go to the blueprint. Bo, I believe is the next slide. You can learn a little bit more there. It is going to have a little bit more information, and it's a different way of teaching. So some people, they need to visualize and kind of read through it versus maybe watching a video and hearing somebody talk about it. It's just more reinforcement. But it does go into more depth of, how your business card should look. I mean, it's kind of from start to finish as far as the home study course, where the series, we're really kind of skipping those parts, condensing it into really these executable steps and how do we go out there and actually close a deal using the REI Pro system as well. So that's where you would go to learn a little bit more about that.
All right, another one from Bobby. Hello again, fellas. I have an opportunity to assume 3 property loans where the houses are in pre-foreclosure. Please explain a little more detail on wraparounds, if there is some walking cash available, and also if the owner doesn't want any money, he just wants out. I researched and found where the insurance structuring is the best way to avoid triggering the due on sale clause, since the bank sees the insurance change hands and we can list the seller and the buyer on the insurance. I will definitely get my attorney to chime in as well.
Yeah, so without actually running numbers and so forth, what I decided to do, Bobby, is kind of use your questions here and actually give you an image. And I wanted to talk about this image. So you can go ahead, Bo. So, and hopefully this will help everybody. So this would be an example of someone that is in pre-foreclosure, and we're assuming that maybe the seller, wants to walk away with some money. And again, this could be structured in so many different ways as far as a numbers point of view, but just to kind of keep things simple, if you look at the center square here, this would be what we call the original loan. So this is the owner's loan on here for, using easy numbers here, 100,000. I know if you're in California, New York, or somewhere, you can't buy a bathroom for 100 grand, but just to keep the numbers simple. So this is the original. So they're fall behind on this 100. So they have back payments and so forth. If the owner would agree to sell you this property with you making up the back payments, doing a seller finance, let's say for 175. So it's going to be that outer box. And this is exactly why they call it a wraparound, because what we're doing is we're literally wrapping a new loan agreement around the old existing one. Okay, so you wouldn't sign the 175 unless you knew it had profit. And that's why I'm showing you in the purple that the property ARV is 250. Okay, so now before a million questions come in, is someone will always say, well, why doesn't the owner just sell the property? We say that all the time, just sell the property for as much as you can to get out of this problem. And what do people do? They wait to the end. They're in trouble. They can't do anything. And now that's where you walk in and structure a new loan. So if we look at, and I'm just even, rounding these numbers out, if the original homeowner has a loan on it for 100 and you put a new agreement for 175, you're going to seller finance that property. You're going to go fix it up. And then when you sell the property, that's where there's that $75,000 difference. Okay. Now we could take that 75 and give it to the owner. We could negotiate, but that's going to be the difference between, what the owner could walk away with. Okay. Now, what would you walk away with? Well, if you got it for 175, of course, there'd be back payments and things of that nature. There's going to be rehab costs. You turn around and sell it for the 250, you're going to have your profit margin over here. The seller could also walk away with some cash as well, but I'm not going to give the seller any cash until I fix it up and resell the property. So that's kind of an example of just kind of walking away. And you, like I said, you could structure this in so many different ways. You could technically give the owner some cash up front and then a little bit more when you eventually close that deal with the new buyer after you fix it up. Then we look at the opposite, and that's where you have the original $100,000 loan, but this is where the owner just wants to walk away. And so even though it's called a wraparound, you're really just taking over their existing mortgage on top of penalties, back payments, things of that nature. Now, in this case, the difference between 100 and 100 is 0. So there is no money left over for the owner. And that's the owner that says, Bobby, take the house, get me out of this mess. I'm done worrying about it. Now, that's great news for you, because if you buy it for 100 and you fix it up and then eventually sell it for the 250, then your profit margin's only going to increase in that particular example. So there's two just basic images that you can look at from the owner collecting some money, and then an example of an owner that just simply walks away.
Yeah, that's a really deep subject, but that's a pretty good explanation.
Yeah,
it's a
this is a whole training series, and if you're lost on this, it's okay. Don't get too much into it. But those of you that are working seller financing, working with pre-foreclosures, it's going to start to make a little more sense. As far as the insurance, yeah, that's going to be a big one. What you can do is be named on the insurance as second insured, and that is usually the easiest way to do it. Now, if you're not going to keep the property for a year or two, like I always said, when you work with somebody in pre-foreclosure, I'm going to get in and get out as quickly as possible. And so if you're only going to really have the property for 3 months or whatever that rehab time is to fix it up and resell it, it wouldn't really matter how you structured it, because by the time the bank would even think to know what to do, you would have already have sold the property. But just to kind of be on the safe side, you could have the owner actually name you on their insurance policy as second insured. So, and obviously, of course, like you said, you definitely want to have your attorney in on this, and especially drafting up the documents. So hopefully that answered your question.
All right, next question from Jahari. I've been talking to a lot of owners. They're all saying that they want to sell outright because the market in my area is, quote, hot right now. Homes are selling within days. Could you give me an example of a good strategy to work around that scenario?
Well, there really isn't one. If properties are selling within days, what that's telling me is that we're not finding the motivated sellers. So we really need to focus on the motivated sellers. It's going to be way too difficult to try to convince somebody that, and I'll really give you one strategy that could potentially make sense for somebody would be seller financing. If the owner actually looked at, if they seller finance it over the next 5-10 years, they would make a lot more money from it. They could use the property as more of an investment than saying, hey, I just want to sell and get rid of it, because, a lot of times what owners do is, or I'll ask them sometimes too, I'll say, well, what are you going to do with the equity? So some people will go and they'll go put it into a new house. That would be kind of the normal person, right? Some people will be like, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the equity. And if you think about, they could use, instead of just putting it in a bank account, they could use the property as more of an investment tool that they could earn interest on. So that would be really the only strategy, but I think it's more focusing on the more motivated sellers, those people that are in a situation of divorce or loss of job or behind on payments, and kind of more focusing on that than it is just focusing on houses that are selling within days. So that was it on that.
Next one from Susan. My very first lease option deal will be coming to a close in April of next year. I stayed in the middle on this one. I'm not sure what to expect. Can you briefly explain the steps that will take place? Also, if the tenant buyers cannot close on the property, I understand that I could possibly just extend the contract, correct? With the events that have unfolded this year, I'm afraid that may be the case, as one of them have lost their job. Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, so Susan, I actually wrote out the steps so everybody could see instead of just me going through it. So again, it's kind of general steps, but this is exactly how I would look at it and do it. So step one is have your buyer confirm loan approval at least 30 days prior to the expiration. If we go back to more of the first question, I really wanted to kind of start that process from day one, but we really need to talk to them and figure out where they are. I think that's number one important. Step number two, you would contact the title company or closing attorney, which I would personally prefer a closing attorney. A lot of times, especially being in real estate, they're going to be a lot more creative versus title company. Although they have attorneys there, it's just, 99% of the transactions are, there's a realtor, there's a buyer, there's a seller, and there's a bank. So when you do something kind of creative, maybe a closing attorney might work out better. Step three is to explain to the attorney that there will be 2 closings, and that's when you're going to deliver both contracts. Okay, so let's go back to step one. Number one, I've confirmed that my buyer has started the loan process. Everything looks good. They're approved. Now I'm going to actually take the contract that I have with the seller, the contract I have with the buyer, and I'm going to take it down to the closing attorney or title company. And also just be sure that they understand what you're talking about. When you say 2 closings or double close, sometimes you may have to educate them on that. And then step 4, very important thing is constantly stay in contact with the title company or the closing attorney as well as the buyer. Always follow up with people. Make sure that everything's still on track. You want this deal to finally come to an end. You need to be the one that actually puts your foot forward and says, hey, I need to make sure everyone's doing their job. I know that sounds funny, but that's just the way that you have to do it. Step 5 is eventually, yes, you're going to close with the buyer and the seller. It's going to be 2 separate times. When you do a double close, I always like to explain it's like, okay, you go into this room and you close with the seller, and then 5 minutes later you close with the buyer in a different room. But at the end of the day, it could be 3 hours apart. These could be 2 different days apart. So sometimes one of the parties can't be there. Maybe they're FedExing the paperwork and so on. So follow those basic steps when we're talking about going into a double close. Now, the other part of this is you're afraid that they can't close, especially with the things that have gone on lately, people's jobs, things of that nature. What I would do is to reach out to them like ASAP, and I would just get clarification. And it could start slowly, like, hey, I was just checking in. Hope everything's okay. I know we're expected to close. What was it? I think it was April next year.
Yeah, April.
And hey, just wondering if, we're still expecting to close then, just kind of not like, hey, you're going to close, but more of a, hey, just trying to, figure out, are you still wanting to buy, number one, because you'll find a lot of people, they may change their mind in the process of saying, with everything going on and maybe they lost their job, or maybe they're, in transition between jobs. You just don't know with people that they could actually change the mind. And it might be better for you to find that out now than it would be to wait to the end. But follow those basic steps there.
Okay, next question came from Cheryl, and she says she wants to learn the pre-foreclosure process. Well, I know we got some new people in here, Cheryl, so I thought I'd take a second. I'm going to switch screens just for a minute. I'm going to jump into REI Pro because I'm sure most of you are aware, but I want to definitely make sure that you guys have a wealth of information, not only just from the tool itself, but either from the top right-hand corner where you have your little icon and you can go to help video, not help videos, it was an education center in there, or on the dashboard all the way at the bottom, you'll see the education center. Now, we show you the last 3 things that we stuck in here, but there's a little arrow here that says see all. If you click on that, you'll go into the full-blown education center, and we've got everything from quick tips to new updates, these live Q&A sessions, general tips, and one of your questions was pre-foreclosure investing. If you scroll down to that, you'll see a 7-part series that Chris did on pre-foreclosure investing. So you can go all the way over here on this right arrow, start with episode 1, then go to 2 and just binge watch these things here on pre-foreclosure, where he does a fantastic job explaining this from start to finish. Same thing with seller financing, lease option. This is the wholesale series that he's doing. Episode 2, I think, is coming out later this week. And so you guys have a lot of wealth of knowledge right here in education. So make sure you take advantage of this stuff, along with our help system too up here that I was talking about, where we talk about how to use REI Pro, but there's a lot of education sometimes in those videos.
Yes. Yeah, the education is there for you guys.
That's correct.
To help you get more knowledge on the process, the understanding, utilizing the education combined with the tool that you have in front of you. And it's great because not only are we the developers of the system, we're also the educators of the system. So when we talk about education and then you go through the system, it makes more sense, especially when we start going through the executable steps in the process. So definitely, go through the education center. Some of the videos we have in there, you'll see some old screenshots of REI Pro, but it's more the information on the strategy that's the valuable part. Other than that, we are releasing these new series, so definitely check that out.
All right, next question from, I guess it's Javine. Pre-foreclosure auction date is 9/18/2020. Is that enough time to negotiate with the seller?
It actually is. I have now, obviously you need to get going, right? So we need to get the payoff amount. We need to get the back payments. We need to start getting the numbers and so forth and going through the process. I have literally, when I get the homeowner to tell the bank that they're getting ready to sell it, to postpone the auction, and I've done this about almost all the way up to the day before. There's some that are pretty picky the day before, but within 3 days of the auction, I've had 100% of the time I've gotten the bank to postpone the auction when we get the seller to sign a contract with you that you're going to buy it. Okay. And then once I get the contract to buy, it's more of just, they're going to submit it to the bank and hopefully they'll postpone it. But it's more of a delay for you to get everything in line for the seller finance that you're going to do on the property, make up the back payments and all that good stuff. So yes, you do have time, and we're doing this live on September 3rd, and we're looking at the 18th. So you do have enough time on this. But if you're starting from scratch, like I have to go market the property, obviously it could take some time to market the property. But yes, I would totally jump on this.
Yep.
And especially with the delays of auctions that are going on, I would definitely do it.
All right, next question from Hannah. Can I attend even if I don't have a question yet? Well, Hannah, that's exactly what these sessions are for. You don't have to have a question to be a part of these live Q&As. You know, when I first got started in real estate, I just wanted to listen and immerse myself around with everybody else that was that I was around in a meetup club or to going to a RIA chapter. But that's how I learned a lot of this stuff. So being a part of this, you may not know the exact question you want to ask, but you're learning a lot about all the answers going through this. So I'm glad you're here. Definitely keep attending these, and you never know. We're going to say something that's going to spark a question, and you can get a question answered live too a lot of times. All right, next question from Dale. Could you please tell us more about the tax consequences when doing double closings? What kind of consequences are we talking about? Not looking for CPA advice, but more of the consequences from your experience. Thank you.
Well, that's good because I'm not a CPA, but so there's really not tax consequences on a double closing. You know, the IRS just says, hey, you're going to pay taxes on any money you receive. Where the double close comes into play, it's more of how much money is it going to cost you? Because you're going to actually be paying more in closing, because now instead of one closing, there's two closings, and your profit margin is going to come down, which ultimately you'd pay less taxes because you didn't make as much. But there really isn't tax consequences for doing a double close. I hope that was just short and sweet there.
All right. Next question from Jahari. I have 3 clients that I have pre-qualified from promotion techniques I learned in REI Pro. Well, that's good, Jahari. I don't have any homes on contract yet. How do I build trust with the clients without any homes to show them? Well, you know, I'd say building trust with someone really, to me, mostly it's about communication. And I'm assuming you're talking about potential buyers or investors here that you've already kind of pre-qualified. But in either case, I would make sure to know exactly what it is that they're looking for and then go out and find that. But mainly just keeping in contact with them and letting them know exactly what's going on along this process. You know, because I was working with a guy one time, and he was going to be needing a lease option coming from South Florida into Atlanta. And really, he said, this is what I'm looking for. I could buy, but this is what I want. And so I've already pre-qualified what he needed. He told me exactly what he wanted. And then my job was really just to go find that and market to him. So just keep in contact. I think communication is the key to doing this. All right, next question from Dale. How to figure out double closing costs with title companies in advance at the beginning of the process? Can we just send them lease option contracts and ask them for an estimate closing cost associated with double closing? Just trying to understand better from a practical standpoint what to ask and how to do it. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it really is that simple, Dale. Me personally, I would contact a real estate closing attorney. Like I've said before, they just know the business a little bit better. And then literally ask them, hey, what are their general closing costs? And this is going to be different everywhere. You know, being in Texas, you know, it was where a house was $3,000 in closing costs, it was $700 in Georgia. So, I mean, it's just different everywhere. So what you want to do is just really, as simple as this sounds, is to contact the closing attorney's office and find out what is their standard closing cost, at least approximation of what they charge for doing a title search and things of that nature. Then just simply ask, do you do what's called double closings? And where you're going to be in the middle of a deal, you have a contract with the seller, you have a contract with the buyer, and you don't want your buyer to see how much you're profiting from the deal, and you want 2 closings set, and verify that they actually do it. And then how much would that be? Because the one thing that you don't want to do is if the closing cost, this is just an example, if the closing cost is $1,000 and you have 2 closings, most people would go, that's $2,000. if they are familiar with double closings, what I like to call is a pass-through closing, where a lot of paperwork won't be duplicated, is it will help cut down on the second closing. So it's simple as just asking them. When I got started with title companies, I literally walked into the door and said, "Hi, my name is Chris. I'm looking to invest in real estate and I want to build a relationship." And literally the manager came out and gave me a business card and said, "Great, we'd love to do business with you." And that's what you have to keep in mind. They want your business. We just need to understand, number one, do they do it? And then I would look at from a cost point of view, because it doesn't matter what the cost is if they don't do them. So find out if they do them, and then find out what is the general cost for closing deals like this. And they'll give you a ballpark. It probably won't be exact, but it's really that simple.
Yep. Question from Dalibor. How to approach an unemployed FSBO? What option would work knowing that the owner is able to keep paying for the mortgage while looking for a job? Already 6 months on the market. I was thinking about seller financing and lease option, but the main problem is that the owner doesn't want to become a tenant. How to help the owner in this situation? House is overpriced by the owner. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the owner won't be the tenant, but the fastest way would be a lease option. You can generally get a buyer in there fairly quickly. And here's why I say it's faster, because it takes about 5 minutes to draw up the paperwork. Where from a seller finance point of view, I'm going to have my attorney, it could be days and so forth to get everything drawn up. So if you did a lease option, it would be the fastest, but they would be the landlord. But also keep in mind that your tenant buyer is going to be, in their mind, they're wanting to buy the house. So it's not like, and they're going to be taking care of the maintenance costs and repairs up to $500, which we put in our contract. So it's not like they're just going to get, a call every night saying, "Hey, come fix this, come fix that." Because if you're in the middle of the deal, you'll probably be handling some of those things. But the buyer ultimately is wanting to buy. So they're going to take care of up to the $500. It's only when something big goes out, the AC or something like that. So where the seller finance, he wouldn't have to be worried about being a landlord. He's just going to get a check, because if you seller finance the property from them, you own the house. And if you own the house, then you can decide what you want to do with it. If you want to lease option it out or rent it out or do whatever you want to do with the house, the owner is just going to get a check and he's not going to have to worry about it. So there's two different ways that you could handle it from a speed point of view, especially somebody that's unemployed and they have a house. I would go the lease option route, because you can find buyers fairly quickly and the paperwork you do at the kitchen table. Okay. Whereas seller finance might be more in the seller's, idea of selling the property, because he doesn't have to become that landlord, or at least that thought process of being a landlord. So, I would start with the lease option, but at the end of the day, I'd put both offers on paper. You can go into REI Pro, fill out the offers, and I would present them both to them. And you can, a lot of making offers is educating the seller. So when you put both offers down on the table, educate them. Don't assume that they know what you're talking about. Everybody goes, "Oh, yeah. And that's usually, they have no idea what you're talking about. And it's almost as simple as, "Hey, if we do a lease option, here's my lease option offer. We're going to put a good quality tenant in this property that wants to buy." This ultimately would be the fastest way to get those payments covered, and the buyer's going to take care of the property up to $500 per occurrence. That's kind of how I would say it to the seller. So hopefully there's a couple of tips there that you can take away, but I would offer both.
All right. Question from Perez. Hello, Mr. Chris and Mr. Bo. On the old software, you could upload or transfer the image of the house to the basic information box on the subject property that you're looking at. was wondering, could you still do that on the new software, or is it just that you can only look at it where the lot lines, the street view, and the other stuff is? Well, I thought I would actually show you guys how to do this. So let me jump over into REI Pro real quick. Okay, and I'm gonna go to the properties section, and I'm assuming you're talking about this image here. We'll click on a property, and what you're referring to is the lot line information. If you click on this little square here, they'll expand. You can go into lot lines. You can look at the satellite view. We can look at a street view. And yes, this is not the same house, because doing this for example is one of my houses that I had a picture of. But that's what you're referring to, saying you thought that's the only thing that you could do. Now, this section here is your image section that pertain to this property. Again, this is not the right image for this, but you have a toolbar here at the bottom, and you got this little quick menu to show you all the different images that you've uploaded. You can set your favorites, you can delete one. This icon here, the third one, is upload images. If you click on that, it's gonna say, well, pop up your, on your computer over your Mac or Windows to choose one or more images. So let's just say I select a couple of images here and I hit open. And that's going to actually upload these images in here. And it's just like any other picture scrolling thing here that you can scroll through. You go through, you see all the images. I may want this particular image to be my main image, and I can click on the little set as main photo. And when you do that, it sets it as the main photo here going down on the main property list. So yes, you still have the capability of uploading images, and that's what this box is for here. The only thing that in a previous version, and it was not really us, it's Google changed rules, you're able to grab a street view and move it over into here. You still can do that. You just go grab the street view, take a picture on your computer, and then upload it like just a standard image.
Yeah, that actually really sucked when Google made that change, because that was kind of cool. You could just say, I want that set as main photo, and you could easily do that. And I know a lot of people were upset, but it wasn't something we chose to do. That's for sure.
No, it
that
was
was, but anyways, Bo, we could take some questions.
Yeah, I think we can. All right, so if you guys got any questions, go ahead. I see some of you have already typed in questions into the Q&A panel. I see you're also some people typing in the chat box. I'm going to bring up two windows here, so give me just a second. Okay, so we have one from Anonymous. Okay, I have a seller who owns 3 duplexes and wants to sell them all together. Since I plan on wholesaling the entire package, can I create one contract for all of them, or should I create a different contract for each property?
So, very good question, actually. I'm gonna give you 2 viewpoints on this. So when I did it, and I did like 18 houses on one, I did 12 duplexes, an apartment complex, I did all on one contract, and I did sell it all to one other investor. You can do that. You can put it all under one contract. Just keep in mind that you have to sell it all, right? If you put it under separate contracts, you could technically sell it to 3 different people. So I think this really comes down to more of how the seller wants it handled. And in my guess, the seller's going to say, no, I want all 3 gone together at the same time. If that's the case, then you would have to put them all on one contract. So where you have the address and the legal description, you're just going to triple that. Okay. And then you're going to have one purchase price, and you have one contract. So yes, you can put it on one contract. If you can put it on 3 separate contracts, you technically could sell it to 3 different people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bobby, when performing a wrap, have you had any issues with the seller not being able to purchase another home after they move out since they have a current mortgage?
Usually when I do a wrap, they're in a motivated situation where they couldn't actually buy another house, regardless if I did a wrap or not. There's not a deal that comes to my mind that where the seller was like, oh my gosh, now I can't go buy another house. I mean, worst case scenario, you could do a lease find another property for the seller, do a lease option or, another deal. But I don't have a property that comes to mind where I had an issue with that, because most of the sellers already knew they weren't going to buy again, or that wasn't going to be an issue doing that. So, and again, a lot of it comes down to the actual owner's credit and, their income and so forth. But I can't think of a time that happened where it was a problem.
I think Wayne's just asking a suggestion here. He says, is it possible to add a form for a VA to enter property leads without having them log into the system or without having to go through Zapier? Wayne, that's a good suggestion. I'd say send that suggestion over to us. We'll put on the list. Chris and I go through every single one of these suggestions. And if it's something we feel like definitely going to benefit everybody and not customize it for one person, it's a good shot that might get in there. Now, what you are talking about, Zapier, yes, you can go through Zapier because there's a ton of people that have incoming leads from various places, not just VAs. So we partner with Zapier along with thousands of other companies, from big names from Google to Slack and Facebook. They all have these plugins for Zapier as well. And it's really so all of the different systems out there can communicate with each other without having to do custom programming for each one of those. So Zapier would be the quickest and fastest way to set up some form of a form that would then integrate back into REI Pro. But thanks for the suggestions, and feel free to send that in to us.
Yeah. And for people that have no idea what you're talking about, just a quick example, Bo, would be, maybe your team uses, Google Doc,
Yeah.
right? And you want that information to flow into REI Pro. And there's a place in your account section that you can actually integrate those two. Again, yes, going through Zapier, but once you set that up, then it's set up. It's not like you have to do it every single time. So you could actually integrate the two. And that's just one example of thousands of things that you could actually integrate.
Yeah, I even set up a quick example of a bird dog situation using a Google spreadsheet. And it was just a Google sheet specifically set up with columns, address, city, state, zip. Every time that bird dog would put a new row in there, it would trigger it to automatically come into REI Pro.
Yeah. And really I would say it's always dumbing things down. And I think that is almost like the easiest way to do it.
Question from Dior. I'm looking to purchase a home with high equity using raw land that I own. The appraised value, according to the borrower, is about $22,000 total. Will I be able to leverage the land and only come out of my pocket minimally?
Oh, you lost the presentation. We're going to
Yeah, I
look
see
at
it.
you.
I'll let you. I'll get it back.
Yeah. Can you read that again?
Yes. I'll try to get back the screen there. So, looking to purchase a home with high equity using the raw land that I own. The appraised value, according to the borough, is about $22,000 total. Will I be able to leverage the land and only come out of pocket minimally? Sounds like he's wanting to leverage his land, maybe borrow money against it since he owns it free and clear, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you totally do that. There's also a really cool seller finance strategy called substitution of collateral. And it's not an everyday kind of strategy you would use, but we have used boats as collateral to buy a house so I could get it free and clear. And what we would do, well, I'm not even going to explain because that's just a long conversation, but absolutely you could potentially leverage, the land that you have in order to buy this property. Another way of doing it maybe would be to get private money to buy the property as well. And you could get private money and use the land as collateral as well, not just with the owner, because the owner would just prefer just to be done with the deal. So there's an idea for you.
All right, let's say, Susan, on Bobby's question about the banks locking up the home, you said to have the owner call and ask about the status. Could we actually get access to that info and call ourselves if we have the owner sign a document to do that.
Yeah, an authorization of release, you can. Absolutely.
Dalibor, when pre-qualifying potential tenants, how do we determine the minimum credit score and what the credit score means to us as landlords? Let's say that somebody has a score of 570, what that number means to us without seeing more deep into their financial situation. Well,
Yeah, that's
Dalibor,
what you can answer that one, Bo.
yeah, because I've got a relationship. Me and Chris use them many times. A mortgage broker, and especially when we're doing lease options, because our goal here with the lease option is to help this tenant, if you will, at the time, tenant buyer, lease option. They want to get them to really close on the deal. Okay, so I'll get them with my mortgage broker day one, or even before signing and inking it, because I need to know if they're in a position to be able to qualify at least, in a year from now, maybe not today, but what would it take to get them qualified? Well, if they're at 570 and the mortgage broker can look at all of their entire, credit file and go, okay, there's just no way this is going to happen in a year. And that may have to change your strategy, or this person may just need to keep renting. But generally what our mortgage broker will do is say, okay, if you pay $50 on this card, get that one thing there off your credit report that's hurting you by 60 points and so on, and literally build a roadmap, then they can have the FICO score adjusted pretty quickly once they've done those things, and then they can write the loan. So you kind of really need to know, is this person going to be able to buy in a year from now? And then help them do that. They really appreciate being, having just a resource to get their credit fixed like that. Not sure if that's what you're about to jump in and answer there, Chris.
No, I mean, yeah, and you can even talk to your mortgage broker and say, hey, what is the lowest credit score you can have right now to buy a house in this price range?
And they'll tell
but
you.
Again, everybody's unique, and that's the thing. So,
from Jeff, if I lease option a property from an owner, or they owner finance the property, and I turn around and lease it to a tenant buyer, who pays taxes, insurance, and maintenance?
Well, if you lease option it, the owner still owns the house. If you sell or finance it, you own the house, so you would be paying the taxes, insurance on it.
What is the best way to find lease option buyers?
This one is actually, it was a question from our last was it deal analysis, maybe? I don't know. I kind of went over this. When you get let's say you have a property, number one, I like to get a yard sign with flyers. I like to put on Zillow and Craigslist. Another way, if you don't have houses, you could run some basic marketing on Google to go to your website to learn more about your program, your lease option program, lease purchase program. You could put some basic ads on Craigslist. You can network with local RIAs. As simple as, I don't want to say just go to the restaurant, because it is difficult to go to the restaurants today, but as simple as just passing your business card out, just letting people know what you do, because it sometimes comes down to, it's not the person you talk to, it's the person they know that's looking for an opportunity, looking for a house, but their credit's not perfect. So that's how, just a few ways. I mean, usually Craigslist is pretty good. If you're just buying a generic or getting a generic list of people interested in what you're offering, either lease option or seller finance.
All right. Dalibor, could you please explain a little more about the insurance of the property challenge when doing a seller finance and lease option? Some examples of how to structure it would want to do.
Yeah, well, I can't write on the screen, but with a lease option, it's irrelevant because the owner owns the house. They pay the insurance, period. With the seller finance, without, triggering the due on sale clause, it's kind of like Bobby's deal, is to just be named second on the current insurance policy. Okay. So, and basically if anything goes wrong, you basically have the right to contact the insurance company, have somebody come out and adjust or something. When things do happen, you have the right to do that, and the owner's giving you permission to do that. There's not really something to craft up from a numbers point of view with that. So lease options, the owner takes care of that. And then just as they own the house, and then seller finance, the quick and easy way would be just name second insured on the policy.
All right, Larry, where do you find a list of attorneys? Well, you can go to step 9 in the software, which would be a list of title companies and or attorneys. We do have about 15,000 or so across the U.S. That's one way of finding them. Other than that, the good old yellow pages in your area, go to RIA meetings. You'll find a lot of local people that do a lot of deals that can recommend good attorneys that know how to do some of these creative strategies.
Yeah, the local RIA is going to be one of your best ways, other than just Googling real estate attorney
Yeah.
in your area. And then now it's just a matter of contacting people and asking those attorneys, depending on what you're doing. Like if you were seller financing, I would ask, are you familiar with seller financing and wraparounds? Because I'm looking for an attorney to work with. And they'll tell you, well, I've done a couple of them. That may not be the person you want to do business with. So it may take a few phone calls.
Question, with a lease option, would you take the down payment off the principal before the lease is up or after the lease is up?
Well, the down payment, we call option payment, is credited to the price. Now that price is only relevant if the buyer actually exercises the option to buy. So they actually go to the bank, and only at that time they're going to actually see that adjusted price. And that would be between the buyer and the bank at that point. So.
All right. I think just a comment coming in from Perez. Thanks for answering my question. It helped out a lot. Please keep up the good info. First time that I'm on live with you guys, but it won't be my last, Perez. Thanks, Perez. That's what we're here for.
All right, got a couple more?
Couple more. Bobby, do we set up an escrow company to handle the payments?
Well, okay, so we're going back to the pre-foreclosure. If I teach you publicly, yeah, you could set up an escrow company. If you're like my student, I'd be like, no, you don't need to. So, but you can. I mean, it's just more added cost for you. A lot of times when you're working with sellers in this situation, it becomes personal, right? And you build a relationship with them, and they really do trust you to do the right thing. And if you build that trust right and you say, hey, you're going to, handle it. Or if you go to them and say, hey, I'm going to have an escrow company, handle everything for us. That way we don't have to worry about it. They may be more happy with you just saying that. So I think each relationship you build with these people could be a little bit different, but I generally would not, but you can.
All right, Victor, can you use the lease option strategy in Texas?
No, you're not supposed to. People do. I would seller finance. That's a long
conversation. So
yes, I was just thinking I probably answered that very slowly, but okay.
Is a lease option and lease purchase the same thing?
Yes. And rent to own. All three of them together are the exact same thing. Just a different way of saying it.
Yep. Paulina, what would be your opinion with a renter who has rented a home for 20 years, where the home has not had a mortgage for 20 years? Do you think it's a good idea to ask the owner to lease option to buy?
I'd say seller finance would be my first thought. Since there's no mortgage on it, I mean, that even makes it even easier.
Yeah, and the seller's going to also earn interest and everything. So, and then instead of being a renter, they actually own the property. So
they wouldn't have to be the landlord. They wouldn't have to worry about maintenance costs and repairs. And because at the end of the day, we say 20 years, well, something's going to go wrong, right? So something will break. So they wouldn't have to worry about that. And then on top of the interest, yeah.
Last question is, what is a good way to find motivated sellers?
Lead Pro.
There you go.
A couple of my favorites is the vacant list, is the absentee. But if you're working pre-foreclosures, to me, that's kind of the niche place to be. Those three are my first three favorite places. Yeah, we say, tax liens. I know we've had a couple of tax questions. I'm just not a fan of those things. I did just like, I wouldn't even advise a student of working that particular part of the business. This is a lot of ands, ifs, and buts with that particular way of investing in real estate. But pre-foreclosure is definitely going to be something to really keep an eye on moving into the next 6 months. Vacant properties as well. It'd be kind of curious to do a nationwide query on how vacant properties may have changed over the last 90 days. But of course, absentee owners are always good. Outside of just kind of general marketing your business, if you watch the wholesaling episode number 1, oh, let me get some water. I'm losing my voice
And
now.
I'll choked up there. Well, while you're doing that is, Jeff, will the recording be available? You missed some of the info. You want to rewatch it? Yes, it will be inside of REI Pro.
Yes. What I was going to say is at the very end of the wholesaling episode is I actually show you our online and offline marketing strategies. So if you want to, go big and say, what's the big picture from a marketing point of view on how to get not just leads, but buyers as well, that would be hit pause and utilize that information.
All right. Some of these answers I'm just typing out. So I guess that's wrapping it up here. That last question.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks for all that submitted questions. And we'll look forward to doing this again. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. A lot of you may be off on Monday. Have a great 3-day weekend. And we will see you guys next time.
Stay safe, but have a wonderful, wonderful long weekend.